let's dive into the list, the general manager candidate list.
Mm-hmm.
We have, based on multiple different reports and piecing together, and Doogie is saying that this is the list of 8 external candidates for the Vikings general manager position, and interviews are going to ramp up next week. So, and by the way, you can read more about these. Judd has all of these candidates listed with bio information on scorenorth.com, but I'd love to just go through this list, throw these names out. You alphabetize these too. Look at you. You alphabetize these on scorenorth.com.
Oh, this ain't my first listicle. I've done this before.
That's great. So in alphabetical order, I'll throw the name out, and Judd, you provide some background here, and then we can kind of kick these around. Again, these GM candidates are much less household names than the coaching candidates that you're going to hear about at some point too.
Absolutely.
But Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who has served as the Browns Vice President of Football Operations since May of 2020. He's first alphabetically on this list.
Yes, he is he would be the first outside the box person, not because he lacked experience. He worked for the Niners, and then he's been a high-ranking official with the Browns. But he's a guy who played basketball at Princeton, incredibly smart, and would come from what I would say would be the more baseballian analytics world than the football world. He is a rising star. I believe he's about 32, 33, so yeah. He's young. But his resume speaks to a very outside the norm of, he's not the football scouting lifer who played linebacker at Michigan State and now he's moved up through the ranks. He's a guy who started, I believe, on Wall Street. He's a guy who then transitioned. In 2013, he got a master's in economics from Stanford, and around the same time got a job with the Niners and went to work there. So this would definitely, I would not discount him for 1 second, but this would definitely be considered an outside the box football hire.
Yes. I love the analytics background, but I wouldn't hire a general manager solely because he's well-versed in analytics.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, we can talk more about this too throughout these names being thrown out, but what attributes do you really want? And I definitely need someone who is a leader and someone who can help set culture. I think the coach is going to be really key in that, and the quarterback should be key in that, whoever that winds up being long-term as well. But I kind of agree with what Patrick Raiche told us on Rap with Raiche, that above all else, whether it's through an analytics prism or whether it's through a scouting background, you really have to know what you're looking at, identifying players. Like you can't, sure. There's a couple names on this list that I'm willing to poke holes in for that very reason, but you can't look at Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson side by side in the first round of a draft and say Jalen Reagor's the guy.
Right.
And that brings us to the second name on this list, who Doogie is predicting will be the next general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, Brandon Brown, Philadelphia Eagles. He was promoted to director of player personnel by the Eagles last offseason. He served as Philadelphia's director of pro scouting for 2 seasons, 2019-20, after originally joining the organization as the assistant director of pro scouting for the 2 years before that. He also spent a couple of years with the Colts. Mm-hmm. I don't know how involved he would have been in a decision like Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson.
Right.
But that's the type of weird thing where you look at that and you're like, boy, now that that's played out over 2 years, yep. What didn't you see in Justin Jefferson, right?
Absolutely. And in doing some background on what took place there, because the question is not like, well, let's just blame the entire franchise. The question is who is to blame here? Like, who made this call?
And teams make mistakes. So it's
they do, but I'd like to know who. But there's mistakes, and then there's royal screw-ups in positions. So it's not like they took the best cornerback, and he sort of busted, and they didn't take Jefferson. Like, these were side-by-side comps, 2 guys right in basically the same draft place, and they royally screwed up. what I have found in going through and trying to find out like who made the call was the scouting department, which I think falls into where Brown was. The scouting department wanted Jefferson. The schematic fit from the coaching staff, which would involve Doug Peterson, was that Jefferson had played the slot in college. Now, he played the slot in college like Cat was forced to shoot from outside at Kentucky. It made him better. It wasn't like, oh, you stink at the outside. But anyway, it sounds like the coaching staff liked what they saw from Rieger more because of the schematic fit. That is still a huge screw up. But I think Brandon Brown was among the scouting staff that correctly identified Jefferson as the better player. Brown, to me, if you look through the bio that I typed up, Phil, Brown to me looks like an interesting cross between football guy and what we were talking about with a guy that has a background that goes beyond that, because he's got a degree in a dual concentration in entrepreneurship and communications, and then a Juris Doctor degree. So like we're talking about a highly educated, smart dude who probably can apply a lot of things as well. So this might be an interesting cross between a guy that knows the statistical / analytics world and also a guy that knows what he's looking at on a football field.
Yep. And again, I don't want to boil something down to like, well, he was part of an organization that whiffed on Justin Jefferson, because teams, you can find whiffs. I mean, Bill Belichick whiffs in the draft all the time. It's hard. The draft is very coin flippy.
Yeah, but the thing about this, where I agree with you, is these were side-by-side guys, like at the same place. Like this is a royal screw-up. This is not a positional screw-up of, oh, you took the wrong corner who we all thought was going to be good.
Yeah, like whoever it was behind the scenes with the Twins that decided, no, Tsuyoshi Nishioka is the franchise shortstop here going forward.
Amen.
Like that guy, probably not going to promote him to a higher role. I don't know. Twins kind of covered that one up. I don't think anyone raised their hand and
they saw him.
Took accountability.
They saw him on beta tapes, VHS
YouTube.
tapes.
Here's a 10-minute YouTube highlight clip.
The German YouTube. That's Rick's greatest moment.
Moritz Boehringer. All right, the third name on this list, Glenn Cook, who has spent the last 6 seasons with the Cleveland Browns as an assistant director of pro scouting and vice president of player personnel more recently over the last couple years. He was with the Colts as a scouting assistant for a couple years. And he also, interestingly enough, was taken by the Chicago Cubs in the 46th round of the 2009 Major League Baseball draft and played in 34 rookie league games. Tom Pelissero reporting Glenn Cook. So again, Cleveland Browns, they've built a pretty damn good roster. They kind of look like they're a quarterback away. It's been a train wreck franchise for 20 years, but the current regime has done a good job in roster building. So Glenn Cook.
I'm just going to say one thing about Glenn Cook that comes to mind. Football. Just a football guy. Like I don't have much to say about his background reads like a guy that eats footballs.
He was a linebacker at Miami, two-sport athlete.
He just wakes up and he goes down and he makes eggs, bacon, and footballs for breakfast.
And more bacon and more football.
Yeah. He just strikes me as a football guy. Yeah. I got nothing to add about Glenn Cook. I'm sorry. Might be a great guy.
Yeah, I'm sure he is.
I'm sure he's a great guy.
Hopefully. What about Monty Osenfort? This is reported by Ben Gessling of the Star Tribune. So he is the Titans director of player personnel and was a finalist for the Carolina Panthers GM job last hiring cycle. Spent 14 years also working for the Patriots before joining the Titans in 2020.
I believe that in Ben Gessling's report about this, he also said that Osenfort was some type of training camp intern with the Vikings in 2001. So here's my theory about a portion of this list, which is Doogie has told us is going to be interviewed on Zoom. My theory is that in some of these cases, this committee of people that's going to vet the process is there to pick brains of people who are coming from successful teams. So like the Titans have been really a nice, I don't know if surprise is the right term. They've been a good, solid team, franchise, right? So I guess my question is, are you really interested in a guy like this, or is this about, well, yeah, it's worth talking to him. Who knows? He could knock their socks off. But if nothing else, you basically have to ask him, what do you guys do? Like what has helped you? What has helped your team? And I think if a person wants the job, they're almost required to tell you some things, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like, well, I can't talk about those things.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's going to be a certain portion of this list of people that probably don't have a great chance, but the team is very smart to try and if they can steal ideas and then apply those, I think that's a very common thing.
Yeah, because they haven't had that fresh thinking, and they've brought, obviously they've hired different people in the front office that have come from other organizations or scouts or what have you, but at the top level of the front office, and even Mike Zimmer was the coach for 8 years, Rick Spielman GM for over a decade, and then also running the draft for it's been 15 years of Rick and Rob Brzezinski, and then it's been and George Payton, they just haven't had an influx of new thought. So I love that angle of, at the very least, getting 9 or 10 interesting tidbits from other teams of the way that they go about their process. Maybe there's a thing here that you never knew that you could apply, whoever your GM winds up being.
Yes.
Ryan Poles is next on the list here from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's been the Chiefs' executive director of player personnel and was a finalist also for the Panthers GM job last year. He's 36 years old, and he's been in the Chiefs' personnel department for 13 years, starting off as a scouting assistant. So this would be essentially his second team. He's been a Chiefs lifer over the last decade plus.
Yeah, and so it appears to me that the Vikings 1,000% got the list of finalists from the Panthers last year and are basically going down that list. The Poles thing again, I think he's a hot commodity, so I wouldn't dismiss his chances. But I think again, you're talking to a guy who has seen in some ways the secret sauce, right? Like the Chiefs have been successful, and what the Vikings would be smart to do with a guy like Poles, and what you need to find out, because I'm going to go back to the importance of this quarterback. Like, how did you identify this?
It was a risky draft. Move up 17 spots, right?
Exactly right. And like the there was thing. And that draft pick, we didn't all say, oh my God, they just they stole Mahomes. How did they do this, right? We all said there's some good QBs in this draft. This might be a great move. You don't know. But if you can find a person who's like, here's what we did, here's what I know, and you're like, okay, I think you're talking, because we can discuss about roster construction, and that's important, and getting the right coach, that's incredibly important. But what we can't have, I don't think personally, is 16 more years of, but the one thing I really couldn't do was find the quarterback. And I'm not talking about Kirk. I'm not talking about going out and getting a short-term guy or signing a guy to a big contract. I'm flat out talking about that 5-year team-controlled guy who is your guy, who for 5 years, you basically can build a roster around him, and he turns into a fantastic player. I mean, that to me is such a huge ingredient for a championship.
And think about everything that went into the drafting and then the development of Pat Mahomes. They moved up. They already were a playoff team, and they already had a rock-solid quarterback in Alex Smith, who I believe may have actually led the league in passer rating, like one of his last couple of years as Chiefs starting quarterback. So, and was he the biggest touchdown pass guy? No, like he was always a little bit more conservative. But they decided, all right, we're in the playoffs. We've got a good quarterback. It's not good enough. We're going to move up 17 spots in the first round for a guy that has some mechanical issues and who's wildly talented, but we're not sure because we see something in him. What did they see in Pat Mahomes that other teams didn't at the time of the draft, personality-wise, leadership-wise, everything? Yes. I think everyone saw the tools, like running, he had Brett Favre comparisons in college.
But we didn't know.
And then what went into essentially maximizing his skill set so that he could perform at this MVP level? Because I think if he gets drafted by some other organizations, I think he's enough of a a shark and a bulldog and a leader that he would have figured it out to some extent. But like, what all went into that whole process, right?
Yes. And as I recall, around the time that they took Mahomes, or right before that, Phil, we did segments in which you basically brought to the table, and it's exactly right, that at that time the Chiefs were the AFC Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
So like
they just had bigger
it was the
grapefruits.
same stuff. Right. But I mean, I would love to know, but they didn't just have them. They hit on that pick. And like, there's a lot of, so I don't know if they're going to pick this guy's brain, or if they think, hey, polls might know this, but it's just so imperative that the next hire at least has a fighting chance, which I don't think Rick did, to identify this type of player.
Mm-hmm. All right. We have 3 more names on this list here. 8 general manager candidates that the Vikings will be interviewing, likely starting early next week. And the next one is an historic one. Catherine Raiche, who is the vice president of football operations for the Philadelphia Eagles since last May. And she will be the first ever woman to interview for an NFL general manager job. Now, in 1983, there was a woman who became a general manager, and I don't know the backstory there, but this is fairly unprecedented.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about this one. I didn't know until I saw the report. I think Schefter broke the story last night that she was actually going to talk to the Vikings, that she is believed to be the most senior ranking team personnel position that has been held in the National Football League by a female. This is one I'm curious about. Is this for show? Is this real? Is this credible, as far as not her, but as far as the interest? She worked for 2 teams, Montreal and Toronto, in the Canadian Football League. She's got a law degree, so obviously super smart. 33, she's young.
Yep.
But this is one where I would like to know, is that like, are the Vikings doing the right thing here, or are the Vikings doing something that is just like, hey, we talked to her, and it's probably good experience, but it caught me by surprise, and I don't know what the answer to my question is. I don't know what the.
I would say 2 things. Number one, I love this because I think women should get opportunities to interview for jobs that they are qualified for in the NFL. And
Absolutely.
And I think whether she is the most qualified in terms of experience among all these candidates is less relevant. If you feel strongly about her, and if you feel like she adds value to a front office and has a chance to be a GM someday, give her a chance to interview and normalize that process for future women. I'm all for that.
Mm-hmm.
I would be careful hiring a 33-year-old, and that applies to a couple others on this list too,
Yes.
to run an NFL organization. Because I just think, and listen, I'm all for youth movement, and I'm all for innovation, but I just think there's a certain level of life and professional experience you need that probably doesn't come along when you're 32 or 33 years old enough to run. I mean, it is a big job. So whether it's Kwesi Adofo-Mensah or whether it's Catherine Reisch.
Yes.
Even who was there was a 36-year-old on here too. Ryan Poles. I would just be careful hiring someone that doesn't have enough life and professional experience leading people. Just be careful.
There is, though. I think that you're right. There is no difference between her and Adofo-Mensah. I think it's the same thing, because and look, the thing too that, and this is exceptionally true now in baseball, the thing too that's becoming commonplace is you don't have to have ridden the buses and played the game. You didn't play the game. Yeah. Can that help? Absolutely it can. But like we are crossing into a territory, no matter what your sex is, where you have the ability now to get jobs. And it's not like, yeah, but you didn't play safety at Virginia. Yeah. So like there's a whole different world here. And I'm sure that old-time sports fans, or some of them, I should say, not all, that's not fair. Some old-time sports fans are going to hate, but like we are definitely going towards a different era here in sports. And the thing that's going to change too is skill set. So like, because it used to be, can you identify talent and that's all still important, but now it's also, can you delegate? Can you communicate? Because as sports fans, I think we have a thought process of what the GM job is, right? Like the GM job is this. That's not necessarily going to be true now, or especially in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It might be, I'm the GM, but I'm delegating what Rick Spielman used to do. So I'm with you on age, but I will say I think we're going to see more and more candidates for these jobs, men and women, where it doesn't matter as far as like what they've done previously in that sport, as long as they've worked in the sport and they have the ability to lead and to actually have a skill set that translates.
Yep. I love that she's getting an interview. We'll see what happens. 2 more names on this list. John Spytek.
I'm going to let Declan take a bow here. This is incredible.
The name is Spytek.
Declan.
John Spytek.
Breaking. Declan, you hit this name.
Mm-hmm. On Monday, I said, look out for this guy. Yeah, no, thank you.
Dude, take your victory lap.
He's this great Bond villain that the Vikings are interviewing here. Okay, does he have this poisonous flower that is going to now cleanse the rest of the Vikings? If you've seen the latest Bond, you know what I'm talking about. No, I think John Spytek deserves a chance, and as we talked about on statements, that he's helped build that Buccaneers roster, and they plugged in Tom Brady, and now they could potentially win their second straight Super Bowl. This guy is definitely really well respected around the league. I believe Jenna Lane said the same thing, who covers the Bucs for Tampa Bay. A lot of other NFL insiders have said same things. This guy's definitely worth an interview. The Bears could still swoop him up, but I'm glad the Vikings are getting a jump start on him and potentially interviewing him.
Yep. So his background is, excuse me, he was promoted to vice president of player personnel last May after being the director of player personnel for the Buccaneers. 6th season with the Bucs and 18th in the NFL. He's actually a native of Pewaukee, Wisconsin, so he's a Midwesterner, and oversees the day-to-day operations of the college and pro scouting departments. And they have built a monster roster that obviously is better because of Tom Brady's existence and some of the free agents they were able to sign. So this is another one where it's like, all right, you got to parse apart how much of his perceived success is because they have Tom Brady,
right,
versus the roster that they have built.
Who might he bring as coach? Are he and Byron buddies?
Byron Leftwich?
Yeah. But I'm saying like in all of these cases, I'm trying to think of just the most obvious connection for coach, right?
Yeah. So. Yep, and that makes sense. And I love me some Byron Leftwich. I would be very happy if the Vikings made Byron Leftwich their next coach. And then the final name here of the 8, Elliott Wolf, New England Patriots. He is the son of longtime Packers general manager Ron Wolf, who built Super Bowl teams. He's a scouting consultant for the Patriots right now, 39 years old, and he was in the Packers organization for a number of years, from 2004 through 2017. Do you know much about Elliott Wolf, Judd, other than like nepotism, keeping nepotism alive here in Minnesota?
He had just started with the Packers the year that I got on the beat for the Star Tribune in 2004 as a kid. He has been how can I put this? So he has been sort of a rising, I don't want to say star, but he became assistant GM for the Browns for a couple of years. When they made a change, they tried to keep him, but he left. He interviewed for the Packers GM job before Brian Gutekunst got that. I got to be honest. This one doesn't excite me.
I'm done with nepotism.
I'm
good with nepotism. I don't want anyone's kid.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. And this might not be fair, but this doesn't feel like a hire that changes a lot. His background, and his dad was a great GM. There's no question about it. But his background is in scouting. He's a football guy.
And here's another thing.
I don't know.
He was with the Packers for a decade and a half.
Yep.
And then he was around the Packers his whole life, right? Because of Ron Wolf.
Yeah.
And in 2017, going into 18, he interviewed longtime front office executive. I'm going to interview now for the opening at GM. And the organization gave it to Brian Gutekunst, and he left.
Yeah. This one just doesn't excite me. It just doesn't.
Yeah. So, sorry, Elliot, you might be a genius, but we're just
it might be
kind of done
unfair.
With the
I'm totally out.
Yeah, I'm good. So those are the 8s. Let us know what you guys think in the YouTube comments section on the SKOR North YouTube channel. And I don't know, it's hard to have super strong opinions about some of these guys and Catherine because we don't work with them on a daily basis in the front office. But
Phil, which of these names excites you the most based on who you think they would bring as the coach?
I will tell you on Purple Daily today.
Oh my God! Oh wow!
That's right.
Oh, a crossover tease. It's like SVU. It's like Criminal Intent. We're crossing over shows.
Yes, I will. I will tell you on Purple Daily because we got to get to some old tweets exposed here. Declan goes into the archives every single week and finds incriminating, exposing tweets.
Blown away.
All right. So this is more of an old takes expose, and all 3 of us kind of have similar takes on this topic I'm about to bring up.
Okay.
So I did a little digging, and last November of 2020, so almost a year and a half ago, we did a fire, extend, and year to year on Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman, Kirk Cousins. Mm-hmm. And all 3 of us have individual takes on that. So I'm going to start with Phil's, then we'll go to Judd's, and then we'll go to mine. Here we go.
I think Mike Zimmer is actually proving this season what a good coach he is. Like, is he Bill Belichick? No. Is he Pete Carroll at his best? Not necessarily. But we might not even really know how great of a coach Mike Zimmer is until he gets to the quarterback that some of those other guys have had. You know, when we think about the best coaches in the NFL, like, look what Mike Tomlin does. Well, yeah, I mean, Mike Tomlin has Ben Roethlisberger, just a steady Hall of Fame presence for 15 years. And Bill Belichick had Tom Brady and Russell Wilson over in Seattle. And so like, Mike Zimmer has a well above 500 record going into this season with guys like Sam Bradford, who was, is fine, like whatever, like couldn't outrun a tree stump, and got hurt all the time. And he had Teddy Bridgewater as a limited rookie. And now Kirk Cousins. Imagine giving Mike Zimmer an elite quarterback, a top 5 quarterback to go along with the defensive prowess. And then when the team looks like, they finally hit that point in a coach's arc where he's going to get fired, right? Like almost every time when you start the way the Vikings started, that coach gets fired. And this team has fought for Mike Zimmer. So I'm with Judd. I'm firing Kirk Cousins. I'm going year to year with a good general manager in Rick Spielman, who does have some flaws, but he's a good general manager. And I'm extending the guy who has shown that this team does not quit on him. So
I was high on Mike Zimmer.
High on Mike Zimmer.
Or I was trying to defend Mike Zimmer a little bit there.
I get.
No, he was trying to bash Kirk, which is typical Mackey. That's why I'm off this show. I'll see you guys later. I'm going to go work with a Kirk stand.
Are you just reading my Twitter @replies the last 72 hours? It's just a live
Twitter's
stream.
turned into a very nasty place, and I'm here for it.
It is. Here's like clockwork here. Vikings fan in Colorado tweets @Phil Mackey. Another stupid take by this hack. Get some hobbies besides talking about how much you hate Kirk and lose some weight as well, double chin.
Man.
You got a beard, dude. You can't even tell if you have a double chin.
I don't think I do anymore. I think I've done
fair.
a pretty good job of getting myself into fairly decent shape.
This is 3 days without shaving for old teenage Dexter here.
I crushed it on the Peloton on Saturday. Okay, a 30-minute record for me on Saturday. Yeah.
All right.
They were talking to you the whole time?
I had like a 360
Come on, Phil.
You
need to pick it up a little bit.
I'd tell him, shut the bleep up. I'm biking.
Judd had a similar take to Phil. Here was Judd's take on extending Mike Zimmer.
Year to year for me is Spielman.
I agree.
And I'm extending Zimmer, and here's why. If push comes to shove, I think he can win me games individually. Like, do I think that he can win a championship? I don't know. But, I mean, he has proven, right, in these last 2 games, his defense is not that good or just flat out not good. But he's finding schemes and ways. I go back to the Saints playoff game. The Vikings probably shouldn't win that game, but defensively, he comes up with this really, for lack of a better term, genius game plan. So fire Cousins, year to year Rick, in part because I don't trust him to find a QB, and that's probably the most important thing that Rick should be able to do, and it's just not, for various reasons, worked out so far. And then my extension goes to Mike Zimmer.
Oh, you're extending Zim too.
I love how
man.
we just all were unanimous, and I'm with you guys. Actually, I have a flip flop on the extension and the year to year, which I'll play here in just a bit. But I love how all three of us were like, no, we're out on Kirk Cousins, and I think most of us still are on the show at least. But it's funny that 14, 15 months later, both the other two that we would extend and go year to year with are out, and technically Kirk Cousins is still on the Vikings roster.
Yeah.
Ugh. All right, here's mine.
Do you agree or disagree?
I
there,
actually
Dan?
disagree with both of you. I'm extending Spielman. I'm year to year with Mike Zimmer, and you know what? It's interchangeable. I probably did short sell the fact that this wouldn't be a unanimous decision. I just think that Rick Spielman finding talent throughout the draft has been like there's plenty of evidence of that, and I just don't know. Like, and I really like Mike Zimmer. I've said to you guys that I think he is the best Vikings coach of my lifetime. I put him ahead of Denny Green. I really do. Maybe that's because I've been exposed to him more, but I just don't know if Zimmer's philosophy can last in 5 more years. But I do know that Rick Spielman, if I had to guess who would be more successful in the next 5 years at finding talent in the draft versus being a Super Bowl team, I think you have a better odds that Rick Spielman will find good draft picks than the Vikings will win a Super Bowl under Mike Zimmer. So,
Yeah, those three first, third round picks that Spielman brought to the table were just absolute steals, and those 7th round picks, and oh boy, just doubling down that Rick Spielman can find talent in the draft. So I won't say this was like an insanely incriminating evidence of old tweets exposed necessarily, but I just wanted to highlight that all three of us were in unanimous decision basically that we would keep Spielman Zimmer around and get rid of Kirk Cousins.
Well, and then of course a lot can happen in a year too, and Zimmer I feel like Zimmer just kind of lost his mind a little bit this year.
Yeah. And I still want Kirk gone, so I really haven't changed completely.
Yep. Amen. But just be careful. There's a lot of
evidence.
crusaders out there that are going to try and show you his 4,000-yard seasons. And
Same
why
as
you
Brett
should
Favre.
hang
And
a
I think
banner.
but I agree with them. I am a big look. I think Kirk is fantastic, and I think that statistically and as far as personality goes, he is going to help the Cleveland Browns so much. I'm with the Kirk stands.
Yeah. I think he would look great just throwing touchdown passes underneath the shadow of the Rocky Mountains out there
100%.
in Denver.
George.
I mean, imagine plugging a 4,000-yard passer into that Denver roster. Just how much damage you can do. That division's up for grabs, too.
And can you
Pat
imagine
Mahomes is coming back down.
throwing the ball?
Justin Herbert got lucky.
The altitude there. Can you imagine how far his passes will travel?
Pretty far. Throw a football over those mountains.
Uncle
Yeah.
Rico.
How much you want to bet I can throw a pigskin over them mountains?
Little Uncle Rico.
All of this reckless speculation fodder has been presented by our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. That's a great executive producer there, sliding into my texts right at the end to say, hey, knucklehead. Federated's been around for over 100 years. I just got caught up in reckless speculation today. I don't know. This was having fun. But if you're a business owner and you're looking to maximize the success of your business and minimize risk, Federated is here to help you. Find out more about the services they can provide you at federatedinsurance.com. And remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours. Boom.
Reckless speculation.
All right. That's a wrap for us. Tomorrow, we're just going to keep an eye on the news cycle here, see if there's any more. We'll Feedback Friday tomorrow as well. I'm Mackie and Judd. You can always hit us up on the SKOR North app, and we will answer your questions and critiques, and there are a lot of them this week. So get ready. Strap in. All right. Yeah, all you do is hate on Cousins. That is not true. I also tweet out WWE memes from time to time.
And you've got a parody
Bachelor
account
takes,
now.
Okay.
Congratulations. A parody
Phil-
is great.
Yeah.
Phil Sucky.
Phil and I run a text thread at WWE promos yesterday, okay? So if you want more of those takes, just let us know, and Phil and I will gladly forward you more text messages on WWE promos.
Yeah.
I'm good.
And Judd's okay on that one. Yeah,
I'm out.
Thank God.
All right, that's a wrap. Mackie and Judd, daily Minnesota sports, entertainment, speculation, therapy. See you guys.